The stagecoach rattled to a halt in front of the dusty main street of Holbrook, Arizona Territory, sending a cloud of amber dust billowing into the warm spring air of 1885. Sarah Nelson gripped her small leather valise tightly as the door swung open, revealing a town that looked far less promising than the flowery descriptions penned in Cornelius Blackburn's letters. She stepped down from the coach, her high-button boots meeting the unpaved road with a soft thud. The journey from Philadelphia had been long and arduous, but the promise of a new life, a prosperous life with a successful rancher, had kept her spirits high. "Madam, this is your stop. Welcome to Holbrook," the driver said, handing down her trunk. Sarah adjusted her bonnet against the harsh afternoon sun. At 22, she had made the boldest decision of her life, answering an advertisement in the matrimonial news. 6 months of correspondence with Cornelius had convinced her that this was her destiny to marry a man she'd never met, who promised her a fine house with servants, sprawling ranch lands, and the security she'd lost when her parents died. "Excuse me," she asked a passing townsman, "could you direct me to the Blackburn Ranch? I'm expected." The man's eyebrows shot up. "Blackburn Ranch," he let out a wheezing laugh. "Ain't no Blackburn Ranch round these parts, miss." A cold sensation spread through Sarah's chest. There must be some mistake. Cornelius Blackburn. He has one of the largest cattle operations in the territory. The man scratched his beard. "Only Cornelius I know works at the livery stable, skinny feller, bit of a dreamer, rents a room above the saloon." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. This couldn't be happening. Every letter, every promise, the house, the wealth, the position in society, had it all been fabrication? "The livery," she repeated numbly. "Where might I find it? End of the street, can't miss it," he pointed. "You all right, miss? You're looking peaked." Sarah straightened her back. "I'm quite well, thank you." With as much dignity as she could muster, she picked up her valise. "Would you be so kind as to tell me where I might find temporary accommodations? Mrs. Wilkins runs a boarding house. 2 streets over, white picket fence." He looked at her with a mixture of pity and curiosity. "You ain't one of them mail-order brides, are you?" Sarah felt her cheeks flush. "I'll find Mrs. Wilkins. Thank you for your assistance." As she walked away, her mind raced. 6 months of letters, promises of a life of comfort and security, all lies. She had sold her parents' home, left everything familiar behind. And for what? A man who didn't even own the land he'd claimed was his. The livery stable loomed ahead, and Sarah hesitated. Confronting this man now might not be wise. She needed time to gather her thoughts, to decide what to do next. She turned toward the direction of the boarding house when a deep voice called out behind her, "Miss, you need some help with that trunk." Sarah turned to see a tall man with broad shoulders, a worn leather vest over a faded blue shirt, and eyes the color of the Arizona sky. His hat was pushed back, revealing brown hair with hints of copper in the sunlight. There was something instantly trustworthy in his stance, in the way he kept a respectful distance while offering assistance. "I'm quite all right, thank you," she replied, though her arms were already aching from the weight of the trunk. "Begging your pardon, but you don't look all right," he said. "New in town?" Sarah hesitated. "Yes, I'm looking for Mrs. Wilkins' boarding house. I'm heading that direction myself. Name's Cole Owens," he said with a slight tip of his hat. "Ranch hand at the Double J just outside town." "Sarah Nelson," she replied, reluctantly allowing him to take the trunk. "Thank you, Mr. Owens." As they walked, Cole glanced at her curiously. "Most folks don't just arrive in Holbrook without a reason. Family here." Sarah stared straight ahead. "I was under the impression I had an arrangement. It appears I was mistaken." Understanding dawned in Cole's eyes. Blackburn, he said, not a question but a statement. Sarah stopped in her tracks. You know him. Everyone knows Cornelius around here, Cole said carefully. He's got big dreams and an even bigger mouth. And no ranch, Sarah said bitterly. No house, no servants, no, Cole admitted. Just a job at the livery and a talent for tall tales. He shifted the trunk to his other hand. I'm sorry, Miss Nelson, truly. They walked in silence for a few moments, Sarah fighting tears that threatened to fall. Everything she had planned, everything she had believed in, had evaporated like morning dew in the desert sun. Here we are, Cole said as they approached a neat white house with a well-tended garden. Mrs. Wilkins is good people. She'll look after you. As he set down her trunk on the porch, Sarah found her voice. Thank you, Mr. Owens, for your help and your honesty. Cole's eyes met hers. Truth's all I've got to offer, Miss Nelson. Not much, but it's always genuine. He hesitated. If you need anything, I'm usually in town on Saturdays. Just ask at the general store. With that, he tipped his hat and walked away, leaving Sarah to face her uncertain future in a town where the only person she knew had already betrayed her. The following morning, Sarah sat across from Mrs. Wilkins at the breakfast table. The older woman had been kind but not intrusive when Sarah arrived, simply showing her to a clean room and inviting her to join the household for meals. So, Mrs. Wilkins said, pouring coffee, you've come all the way from Philadelphia. Yes, Sarah replied. It seems rather foolish now, Mrs. Wilkins studied her. Coming west isn't foolish. Trusting Cornelius Blackburn might have been, but you weren't the first and won't be the last. That man could talk a rattlesnake out of its venom. I should have been more cautious, Sarah admitted, but his letters were so convincing. He described every detail of his ranch, his standing in the community. Mrs. Wilkins snorted. The only thing he owns is the clothes on his back, and even those are probably not paid for. I've sold everything, Sarah whispered. My parents' home, most of their belongings. I have some money, but not enough to return east, Mrs. Wilkins finished for her. She patted Sarah's hand. Well, don't you fret just yet. Holbrook may not be Philadelphia, but we've got opportunities for a smart woman. The school teacher's been looking for an assistant, and the general store needs help with their books. Sarah nodded gratefully. I'll inquire about both. I was a teacher's assistant in Philadelphia, and my father taught me bookkeeping. That's the spirit, Mrs. Wilkins said with approval. Now about Cornelius. I intend to confront him, Sarah said, steel entering her voice. Today, Mrs. Wilkins smiled. I'd pay good money to see that. An hour later, Sarah walked purposefully toward the livery stable. She had changed into her simplest dress, not wanting to appear as though she'd dressed up for this confrontation. Her hair was pulled back in a no-nonsense bun, and she carried herself with all the dignity she could muster. The smell of hay and horses grew stronger as she approached. A thin man with an ill-fitting vest was brushing down a bay mare, his back to her. Mr. Blackburn, Sarah called. The man turned and recognition flashed in his eyes, followed quickly by panic. He was younger than she'd expected, perhaps 25, with a weak chin partially hidden by an attempt at a beard. Nothing like the distinguished gentleman he described himself to be. Sarah, my dear, you've arrived, he exclaimed with forced enthusiasm. I mean to say. The ranch hands needed me here today, and there is no ranch, Sarah interrupted coldly. No ranch hands, no house on the hill, no servants, nothing of what you promised in your letters. Cornelius's face fell. Now, Sarah, I can explain. I have plans, you see, big plans. The ranch is. Well, it's more of a future investment at this point, but you lied to me, Sarah said, her voice trembling with anger. You fabricated an entire life, convinced me to sell my home, travel thousands of miles. I was going to tell you, Cornelius protested. Once we were married, once you saw what a hard worker I am, married. Sarah nearly choked on the word. You truly believed I would still marry you after discovering your deception. People do it all the time out here, he said defensively. Everyone stretches the truth a little, a little. Sarah repeated incredulously. Mr. Blackburn, you invented an entire existence. What kind of marriage could possibly be built on such dishonesty? Cornelius stepped toward her, lowering his voice. Look, I didn't mean any harm, I just wanted a chance. A man like me plain, not much to my name. What woman would choose me if I told the whole truth? But I would have made you happy, Sarah. I would have worked day and night to give you everything I promised. For a moment, Sarah almost pitied him. Almost. The problem, Mr. Blackburn, is that I would never know when you were being truthful. Every word would be suspect, every promise questioned. She straightened her shoulders. Our arrangement is terminated. Please do not attempt to contact me again. As she turned to leave, Cornelius called after her. Where will you go? What will you do? Sarah paused. That is no longer any concern of yours. She walked away with her head high, though inside she felt hollow. The realization that she was truly alone in this strange town, with limited funds and no connections, settled over her like a heavy blanket. She had been so certain of her future, and now everything was uncertain. Lost in thought, she didn't notice the figure leaning against the general store until she nearly collided with him. Whoa there, Cole Owens said, steadying her with a gentle hand on her arm. You all right, Miss Nelson? Sarah blinked up at him, momentarily disoriented. Mr. Owens. I'm sorry, I wasn't watching where I was going. His blue eyes studied her face. Just came from seeing Blackburn, I reckon. Is it that obvious? You've got that look people get after dealing with him. Kind of like you've been sold a prize bull and got a stubborn mule instead. Despite everything, Sarah found herself laughing softly. That's remarkably accurate. Cole smiled, and Sarah noticed how it transformed his weathered face, reaching all the way to his eyes. Can I buy you a cup of coffee? The cafe across the street makes a decent brew, and you look like you could use a moment to sit down. Sarah hesitated. Accepting hospitality from another man so soon after Cornelius's betrayal seemed unwise. And yet, Cole Owens had been nothing but honest with her from the start. Thank you, that would be welcome, she finally said. The cafe was quiet at this hour, most of the breakfast crowd gone and the lunch patrons not yet arrived. They took a table by the window and Cole ordered coffee for them both. So, he said once the waitress had left, what happens now? Sarah appreciated his directness. Mrs. Wilkins suggested I inquire about a position at the school or the general store. I need to find work, establish myself here. Cole's eyebrows rose slightly. You're staying in Holbrook. I haven't much choice, Sarah admitted. My funds are limited, and I've nothing to return to in Philadelphia. That takes courage, Cole said with genuine admiration. Most women in your situation would be on the next stage east. Perhaps that would be wiser. No, Cole said firmly. Running away is rarely the answer. Facing things head-on, that's brave. Their coffee arrived and Sarah wrapped her hands around the warm cup. May I ask you something, Mr. Owens? Cole, please. And yes, ask away. Why are you being so kind to me? You don't know me. Cole considered this as he added sugar to his coffee. I know what it's like to be new somewhere alone. When I first came to Arizona, I didn't know a soul, made some mistakes, trusted the wrong people. He shrugged. Besides, I've watched Cornelius Blackburn spin his tales for years. You're not the first woman he's tried to impress with his imaginary empire. There were others, Sarah asked, shocked. None that traveled as far as you, Cole assured her. Most were local girls who knew better, or women from nearby towns who figured out the truth before things went too far. He paused. You're different, though. There's a determination in you that's rare. Sarah felt a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the coffee. Thank you, though I'm not feeling particularly determined at the moment. You will, Cole said confidently. Give it time. They talked for nearly an hour. Sarah learned that Cole had come west from Missouri after the war, working his way through various ranch jobs until settling at the Double J 5 years ago. He was 31, had never married, and had a reputation as one of the best horsemen in the territory. The Double J is a good outfit, Cole explained. Jacob Johnson's fare pays on time. His wife, Martha, treats the hands like family. It sounds wonderful, Sarah said wistfully. Cole hesitated. Actually, I was thinking. Martha's been complaining about needing help with the house and the accounts. She's expecting their 4th child, and things are getting to be too much for her. Sarah sat up straighter. Are you suggesting? I could speak to them, Cole offered. See if they might have a position for you. Room and board plus wages. It's not Philadelphia society, but it's honest work. I would be most grateful, Sarah said, hardly daring to hope. Truly, Mr. O'Cole. He smiled again, that transformative smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. I'll ride out there today, talk to them. No promises, but Martha's been desperate for help. As they left the cafe, Sarah felt a small spark of hope ignite within her. Perhaps Holbrook would offer her a new beginning after all, one built on truth rather than lies. True to his word, Cole returned the following day with news that the Johnsons were interested in meeting Sarah. They can send a wagon for you tomorrow morning if that suits, he told her as they stood on Mrs. Wilkins' porch. That would be perfect, Sarah replied, relief washing over her. I can't thank you enough. Cole shifted, looking almost embarrassed by her gratitude. It's nothing. The Johnsons are good people. You'll like them. Will you be there? Sarah asked, surprised by how much she hoped the answer would be yes. I work the north pasture mostly, Cole explained. But I come in for meals. You'll see me around. He cleared his throat. I should get back, got supplies to deliver to the ranch. As he turned to leave, Sarah called after him, Cole, thank you for being honest with me. After Cornelius, it means more than you know. He looked back at her, his expression serious. Like I said, Miss Nelson, truth's all I've got to offer. The next morning, Sarah was ready when the Johnson wagon arrived. To her surprise, it was Martha Johnson herself who had come, a petite woman with kind eyes and a very prominent pregnancy. Mrs. Johnson, you shouldn't have made the journey in your condition, Sarah fretted as she loaded her trunk onto the wagon. Martha laughed. Nonsense. I'm pregnant, not invalid. And please call me Martha. If we're to live under the same roof, we should dispense with formalities. She eyed Sarah appraisingly. Cole says you're good with figures and have experience teaching. Yes, Sarah confirmed as they set off. My father was an accountant and I assisted at a girls' school in Philadelphia. Perfect, Martha declared. I need help with the ledgers, the children's schooling, and managing the household. It's grown beyond what I can handle alone, especially now. She patted her rounded belly. How old are your children? Sarah asked. James is 8, Emma is 6, and little Thomas just turned 4, Martha replied proudly. This one's due in 2 months. She glanced at Sarah. Cole told us about your situation, that Cornelius Blackburn should be run out of town for what he does. Sarah felt her cheeks warm. It was my own fault for being so credulous. Nonsense, Martha said firmly. Men like that prey on decent women's hopes. There's no shame in being deceived by a practiced liar. She smiled reassuringly. But that's behind you now. The Double J might not be the grand ranch Blackburn invented, but it's prosperous enough and full of good people. The journey took just over an hour, and Sarah watched with growing interest as the landscape changed from town to open range. The Double J Ranch came into view gradually, first the fence line, then outbuildings, and finally the main house. It was a substantial structure, 2 stories with a wide porch and solid construction. Nothing like the mansion Cornelius had described in his letters, but far more impressive than Sarah had expected. "It's lovely," she breathed. Martha beamed. "Jacob's father built the original cabin, but we've added on over the years. There's 6 bedrooms upstairs, 1 for us, 1 for each child, 1 for you, and a spare for guests. The Hands have a bunkhouse behind the barn." As they pulled up to the house, a tall man with graying hair emerged from the barn. He approached the wagon with long strides, lifting Martha down with careful hands despite her protests. "You shouldn't be driving in your condition," he scolded gently before turning to Sarah. "You must be Miss Nelson. I'm Jacob Johnson. Welcome to the Double J." "Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Johnson," Sarah said, accepting his help down from the wagon. "Cole speaks highly of you," Jacob said, "and we're in desperate need of help around here." He looked at his wife with obvious affection. "This woman tries to do everything herself, even with another baby on the way." "Someone has to keep this place running," Martha retorted good-naturedly. The sound of children's laughter drew Sarah's attention to 3 small figures racing from the house. They skidded to a halt before their mother, eyeing Sarah curiously. "Children, this is Miss Nelson," Martha introduced. "She'll be helping me with the house and your lessons. Say hello properly." 3 voices chorused "Hello, Miss Nelson" with varying degrees of enthusiasm. "It's lovely to meet you all," Sarah replied with a smile. "I look forward to getting to know you better." James, the oldest, squinted at her. "Do you know how to make cookies?" "Miss Bennett knew how to make the best sugar cookies, but she got married and left." "James," Martha admonished. Sarah laughed. "As a matter of fact, I do make excellent cookies. Perhaps we could bake some together tomorrow." This suggestion was met with immediate approval from all 3 children, cementing Sarah's acceptance into the household with remarkable speed. As Jacob carried her trunk upstairs, Sarah found herself standing on the porch, taking in the view of the ranch spreading out before her. The land wasn't as lush as Pennsylvania, but there was a stark beauty to it that spoke to something deep within her. "It grows on you," a familiar voice said behind her. Sarah turned to find Cole standing there, his hat in his hands. "The view, Arizona," he clarified. "When I first came here, I thought it was the most God-forsaken place I'd ever seen. Now I can't imagine being anywhere else." Sarah studied him in the clear afternoon light. There was an openness to his face, a sincerity that contrasted sharply with Cornelius's practiced charm. "The Johnsons seem wonderful," she said. "Thank you again for arranging this. They needed help. You needed work." "Simple as that," Cole replied, though a faint color tinged his tanned cheeks. "I should get back to the herd. Just wanted to make sure you arrived safely." As he turned to go, Sarah called after him, "Will you be at supper?" Cole paused. "Yes, madam. Wouldn't Miss Martha's cooking for anything." Sarah watched him walk toward the corral where several horses waited. There was something about Cole Owens that intrigued her, his straightforwardness, perhaps, or the quiet confidence with which he carried himself. Whatever it was, she found herself looking forward to supper more than she would have expected. The following weeks passed in a blur of activity. Sarah quickly established herself as an invaluable member of the Johnson household. She helped Martha with the accounts, organized the pantry and linens, and began a regular schedule of lessons for the children. The work was demanding but satisfying, and Sarah found herself adapting to ranch life with surprising ease. Cole was often absent during the day, working with the cattle or horses, but he never missed the evening meal. Sarah came to look forward to these gatherings, where the family and senior ranch hands would share stories and news around the large dining table. Cole rarely spoke much, but when he did, everyone listened. There was a respect accorded to him that went beyond his position as foreman. One evening in late April, after the children had been put to bed, Sarah sat on the porch with Martha, enjoying the cool night air. Jacob and Cole were discussing the upcoming cattle drive, their voices a low murmur from Jacob's study. "Cole's been with us nearly 5 years now," Martha remarked, following Sarah's gaze toward the study window. "Best hire Jacob ever made." "He seems very capable," Sarah agreed, trying to sound neutral. Martha's eyes twinkled. "And handsome too, wouldn't you say?" Sarah felt her cheeks warm. I suppose he has a certain appeal." Martha laughed softly. "No need to be coy with me, Sarah. I've seen how you look at him. And how he looks at you when he thinks no one's watching." I'm sure you're mistaken," Sarah stammered. "We're merely acquaintances." "If you say so," Martha said, clearly unconvinced. "Though I will say this Cole Owens is the most honest man I've ever known. After what you went through with Blackburn, that might be worth considering." Before Sarah could respond, the study door opened, and Cole emerged with Jacob. They joined the women on the porch, Jacob taking the seat beside his wife while Cole leaned against the railing, his hat in his hands. "Beautiful night," Jacob commented, gazing up at the star-filled sky. "Indeed," Sarah agreed, conscious of Cole's presence just a few feet away. "Miss Nelson," Cole said suddenly, "I'm riding into town tomorrow for supplies. Thought you might want to come along if you've got errands to run." Martha shot Sarah a knowing look. What a lovely idea. Sarah was just saying she needed fabric for new curtains in her room. "I was," Sarah asked, confused. "You were," Martha insisted, patting her hand. "And I believe Mrs. Wilkins has a package for you as well." "Then yes, I would be pleased to accompany you," Sarah told Cole, trying to ignore Martha's satisfied smile. The following morning dawned clear and bright. Sarah dressed with particular care, selecting a blue calico dress that she knew complemented her eyes. She pinned her hair in a simple but flattering style and added a touch of rose water, a luxury she rarely indulged in. Cole was waiting by the wagon when she emerged from the house. He stood a little straighter when he saw her, his eyes widening slightly before he composed his features. "You look nice," he said simply, helping her onto the wagon seat. "Thank you," Sarah replied, settling her skirts around her. The journey to town was initially quiet, both of them seemingly uncertain how to begin a conversation without the buffer of the Johnson family. Finally, Cole broke the silence. "You've settled in well at the Double J," he observed. "Martha says she doesn't know how they managed without you." Sarah smiled. "That's kind of her. I've come to love it there. The children are delightful and the work is satisfying." "Different from what you expected when you came west," Cole said. "It wasn't a question." "Yes," Sarah admitted. "Very different, but perhaps better in ways I couldn't have anticipated." Cole glanced at her. "No regrets, then, about leaving Philadelphia?" Sarah considered this. "I miss certain things, the theaters, the libraries. But no, I don't regret coming west, even with everything that happened." Cole nodded, seeming to understand all she wasn't saying. "Sometimes the wrong path leads you to the right place." They reached Holbrook just before noon. The town was busy, with wagons and riders moving up and down the main street. Cole helped Sarah down from the wagon, his hands lingering at her waist for just a moment longer than necessary. "I need to order supplies at the general store," he said. "Shall we meet at the cafe for lunch in an hour?" "That would be lovely," Sarah agreed, already looking forward to their meal together. She completed her errands efficiently, purchasing fabric for curtains and collecting the package that had indeed been waiting at Mrs. Wilkins' boarding house, a book of poetry Sarah had ordered before leaving Philadelphia. As she walked toward the cafe, she caught sight of a familiar figure stumbling out of the saloon. Cornelius Blackburn looked worse than when she'd last seen him. His clothes were wrinkled, his face unshaven, and there was a defeated slump to his shoulders. He saw her at the same moment she noticed him, his eyes widening with recognition. "Sarah," he called, hurrying toward her with unsteady steps. "Sarah, wait." Every instinct told her to keep walking, to ignore him completely, but something, perhaps pity, made her stop and face him. "Mr. Blackburn," she acknowledged coldly, "I have nothing to say to you." "Please just listen," Cornelius begged, his voice slurred from drink. "I've been a fool. I know that now. I lost my job at the livery, can't even pay for my room." "That is unfortunate," Sarah said, unmoved, "but it's no concern of mine." "I thought maybe you could help me," he suggested, swaying slightly. "You're doing well, I hear, working for the Johnsons. Maybe you could put in a word for me." Sarah stared at him incredulously. "You lied to me, deceived me completely, and now you expect me to help you." "I said I was sorry," Cornelius protested. "People make mistakes. What you did was not a mistake, Mr. Blackburn. It was a calculated deception that could have ruined my life." Sarah stepped back from him. "Please excuse me. I have an appointment." Cornelius grabbed her arm. "Don't walk away from me. You think you're too good for me now, cozying up to Cole Owens. He's just a ranch hand, not even his own boss." "Let go of me," Sarah said firmly, trying to pull away. "Is there a problem here?" Cole's voice, calm but with an edge of steel, came from behind her. Cornelius immediately released her arm, stepping back with alarm evident on his face. "No problem," he muttered. "Just having a friendly chat with my fiancé." "Ex-fiancé," Sarah corrected sharply, "and there was never actually an engagement, as you well know." Cole moved to stand beside Sarah, his presence solid and reassuring. "Miss Nelson and I have lunch plans, Blackburn. I suggest you move along." Cornelius's face darkened with resentment. "Sure, take her to lunch. She likes men with money and property now, learned her lesson about dreamers like me." "That's not true," Sarah protested, stung by the accusation. "I never cared about your supposed wealth. I cared that you lied to me about everything." "Blackburn," Cole said, his voice dangerously quiet, "I won't tell you again. Move on." For a moment it seemed Cornelius might argue further, but something in Cole's expression changed his mind. He backed away, muttering under his breath, and disappeared into the crowded street. Sarah released a shaky breath. "Thank you," he was becoming insistent. Cole's eyes were concerned as they searched her face. "Are you all right?" "Yes," she assured him. "Just a bit rattled." "I hadn't expected to see him." "He's been drinking heavily since you arrived," Cole explained as they walked toward the cafe. "Lost his job, as he said. Most folks avoid him now." "I should feel vindicated," Sarah mused, "but I only feel sad for him. He created such elaborate fantasies that he began to believe them himself." Cole held the cafe door for her. "That's the difference between you and Blackburn. You see the world as it is, accept it, and move forward. He can only see what he wishes were true." Their lunch was pleasant despite the encounter with Cornelius. Cole told stories of his early days in Arizona, making Sarah laugh with tales of his misadventures. She, in turn, shared memories of Philadelphia, describing the bustling city streets and elegant homes. "I can't imagine it," Cole admitted. "All those people, all that noise." "It has its charms," Sarah said, "but there's something about the open space here that's freeing." Cole studied her. "You surprise me, Miss Nelson. Most Eastern women find Arizona territory primitive and harsh." "Please call me Sarah," she said impulsively. "And yes, it is harsh in some ways, but there's an honesty to it. The land doesn't pretend to be anything other than what it is." Cole smiled, that transformative smile that reached his eyes. Sarah, then, and you're right about the land. It demands truth from those who want to survive here. As they drove back to the Double J later that afternoon, Sarah found herself acutely aware of Cole beside her, the breadth of his shoulders, the strength in his hands as he guided the horses, the profile of his face against the endless blue sky. "Cole," she said quietly, "may I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Why haven't you ever married? You must have had opportunities." He was silent for so long that Sarah feared she had offended him. Finally, he spoke. "I came close once. Her name was Rebecca. We were young back in Missouri." "What happened?" Sarah asked gently. "The war," Cole answered simply. "I joined the Union Army. By the time I came back, she'd married my cousin." His hands tightened on the reins. "After that, I headed west. Never met anyone who made me want to settle down." "I'm sorry," Sarah said, instinctively reaching over to touch his arm. Cole glanced down at her hand, then back to the road. "It was a long time ago, and there must have been suitors in Philadelphia." "A few," Sarah admitted. "None that I could imagine spending my life with. When my parents died, I was suddenly alone, responsible for everything. The advertisement from Cornelius seemed like providence." She laughed softly. "How naive that sounds now." "Not naive," Cole corrected. "Hopeful, there's a difference." They reached the crest of a small hill, and the Double J spread out before them, golden in the late afternoon light. Cole stopped the wagon, letting the horses rest for a moment. "I come up here sometimes," he said, "when I need to remember why I stayed in Arizona. There's something about seeing it all laid out like this, knowing what we've built, what we've accomplished." "It's beautiful," Sarah agreed, struck by the emotion in his voice. Cole turned to her then, his eyes serious. "Sarah, I'm not a man of property like Blackburn pretended to be. I don't own land or cattle. I work for my living and probably always will." "I know that," Sarah said, puzzled by his suddenly solemn tone. "What I'm trying to say is—" He took a deep breath. "I may not have much to offer, but what I have is real. No lies, no pretense." Sarah's heart began to beat faster. "Cole, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that I find myself thinking about you, more than I should, perhaps." His eyes held hers steadily. "I'm not asking for anything. It's too soon, I know that. But I wanted you to know that if you're ready to trust someone again, I'd like to call on you. Properly." Sarah felt a warmth bloom in her chest, spreading outward until her entire body seemed suffused with it. "I would like that very much," she whispered. Cole's smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. He didn't say anything more, didn't try to touch her or make grand declarations. He simply nodded, picked up the reins, and guided the wagon down toward home. Summer arrived in Arizona with relentless heat and cloudless skies. Sarah adapted to the rhythm of ranch life, rising early before the worst of the day's warmth, resting during the hottest hours, and enjoying the relative cool of the evenings on the porch. The children thrived under her tutelage, and Martha relied on her more and more as her pregnancy advanced. True to his word, Cole began calling on Sarah formally. On Sunday afternoons, his one day off, he would appear at the main house freshly shaven, wearing his best shirt, to invite Sarah for a walk or a ride around the property. These outings became the highlight of her week, opportunities to talk freely without the bustle of ranch life around them. On a particularly warm Sunday in June, they rode to a small creek that ran through the northwestern corner of Johnson land. The cottonwood trees provided blessed shade, and they spread a blanket by the water's edge, sharing a picnic lunch that Sarah had prepared. "Martha's time is drawing near," Sarah remarked as they sat watching the water flow past. "She can barely move around the house now." "Jacob's worried," Cole admitted. "The doctor's been called away to Fort Apache if the baby comes early." "I've assisted at births before," Sarah assured him. "And Mrs. Parker from the neighboring ranch is an experienced midwife. Martha will be fine." Cole nodded, seeming reassured. He leaned back against a tree trunk, studying her with open admiration. "You've changed since you arrived." "Have I?" Sarah asked, smoothing her skirts. "You're more confident, more at peace, I think." Sarah considered this. "I suppose I am. I've found purpose here, work that matters. And—" She hesitated. "And people who matter." Cole reached for her hand, his calloused fingers entwining with hers. "You matter to me, Sarah, more than I can say." The simple declaration, spoken plainly without embellishment, moved her more deeply than all of Cornelius's flowery prose ever had. Sarah squeezed his hand, words momentarily beyond her. "I know it's only been a few months," Cole continued, "and after what happened with Blackburn, you have every reason to be cautious. But I want you to know my intentions. I care for you deeply. I hope that one day, when you're ready, you might consider a future with me." Sarah looked into his earnest blue eyes, seeing nothing but honesty there. "Cole," she said softly, "I think I'm falling in love with you." The smile that spread across his face was like nothing she'd seen before, pure joy mingled with disbelief. "Sarah," he whispered, moving closer to her on the blanket. "May I kiss you?" She nodded, her heart hammering in her chest. Cole's hand came up to gently cup her cheek as he leaned forward, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that was both tender and restrained, as though he feared she might break or disappear altogether. When they parted, Sarah felt as though something fundamental had shifted within her. The last lingering shadows of doubt and disappointment were swept away by the warmth in Cole's eyes. "I love you," he said simply. "I think I have since that first day in town, when you were standing there looking lost but determined." Sarah laughed softly. "I certainly didn't feel very determined." "But you were," Cole insisted. "Anyone could see it. You'd been deceived, betrayed, but you weren't beaten." His thumb stroked across her cheekbone. "You're the strongest woman I've ever known, Sarah Nelson." They returned to the ranch later than planned, both glowing with their newly acknowledged feelings. Jacob raised an eyebrow at their joined hands but said nothing, merely smiling knowingly at his wife. That night, as Sarah prepared for bed, a commotion erupted downstairs. She threw on a robe and hurried to the landing to find Martha leaning heavily against the dining room table, her face contorted in pain while Jacob hovered anxiously beside her. "The baby," Martha gasped, seeing Sarah. "It's coming. Too fast." "Jacob, help her to bed," Sarah instructed calmly, falling back on her experience assisting at births in Philadelphia. "I'll send one of the hands for Mrs. Parker." By the time Sarah reached the bunkhouse, Cole was already awake, pulling on his boots at the first sound of disturbance from the main house. "Martha's in labor," Sarah explained breathlessly. "We need Mrs. Parker, but it may be too late. The baby's coming quickly." Cole nodded, immediately understanding the urgency. "I'll ride for her myself. Tom can go for the doctor, though he's likely still at the fort." Within minutes, 2 riders were galloping out of the yard. Sarah hurried back to the house, where Martha's pains were coming with alarming frequency. "This one's in a hurry," Martha panted as Sarah helped her into a clean nightgown. "None of the others came this fast." "Everything will be fine," Sarah assured her, projecting a confidence she didn't entirely feel. "Your body knows what to do." The next 2 hours passed in a blur of activity. Mrs. Parker arrived, took one look at the situation, and immediately took charge. Sarah assisted, following her instructions without question, while Jacob paced the hallway outside, occasionally calling anxious questions through the door. Just before dawn, Martha gave a final push, and a strong cry filled the room as Mrs. Parker lifted a squirming, red-faced baby boy. "Another son," she announced, placing the infant on Martha's chest, strong and healthy by the sound of him. Martha wept with joy, cradling her newborn while Sarah cleared away soiled linens and helped make mother and child comfortable. When Jacob was finally allowed in, his face wet with tears of relief, Sarah slipped out to give the family privacy. She found Cole sitting on the porch steps, his face gray with exhaustion from the hard ride to and from the Parker Ranch. "A boy," she told him, collapsing onto the step beside him. "Both doing well." Cole exhaled deeply. "Thank God, when I saw how worried you were." "I wasn't worried," Sarah protested weakly. Cole gave her a knowing look. "You forget I can read you now." He reached for her hand. "You were magnificent from what Jacob says, calm and capable when everyone else was panicking." "Mrs. Parker did the real work," Sarah demurred. "She says you're a natural midwife," Cole countered. "Says she hasn't seen hands that steady in a birthing room in years." Sarah leaned against his shoulder, suddenly overwhelmed by exhaustion. "I'm just glad they're both safe." Cole pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Get some rest." "You've earned it." The baby, named William Cole Johnson in honor of the ranch foreman who had ridden so hard to fetch help, thrived from the start. Sarah found herself sharing in the family's joy as though it were her own, a feeling that both surprised and delighted her. 2 weeks after William's birth, a letter arrived for Sarah from Philadelphia. It was from her father's former business partner, responding to an inquiry she had made months earlier. "Is everything all right?" Cole asked, when he found her reading it with a furrowed brow. Sarah looked up, surprised. "Yes, actually, better than all right." She handed him the letter. "It seems my father's investments were worth more than I realized. Mr. Harrington has sold the last of them and is forwarding the proceeds." Cole scanned the letter, his eyebrows rising. "Sarah, this is a substantial sum." "Yes," she agreed. "Enough to—" "Well, to do quite a lot, actually." A shadow passed over Cole's face. "Will you be returning to Philadelphia, then, now that you have the means?" "No," Sarah said firmly. "My life is here now." She hesitated. "But I have been thinking. The Miller's property adjoining the Double J is for sale. 200 acres with a small house and good water access." Cole stared at her. "You want to buy land?" "I was hoping we might buy land," Sarah clarified, her heart pounding. "Together, as husband and wife." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity. Then Cole was on his feet, pulling Sarah up with him, his hands framing her face. "Sarah Nelson," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Are you proposing to me?" She laughed, giddy with the boldness of her own actions. "I believe I am." "Is that terribly forward of me?" "Yes," Cole said, grinning, "and I love you for it." His expression sobered. "But I don't want your money, Sarah. I want to provide for you, not the other way around." "It would be our money," Sarah insisted. "Our land, our future, together." She laid her hand against his chest, feeling the strong beat of his heart. "I came west believing in false promises, Cole. But what I found instead was something true: you, the Johnsons, this life. I want to build on that truth." Cole searched her face, then slowly nodded. "On one condition," he said. "I still get to do this properly." He lowered himself to one knee, still holding her hands in his. "Sarah Nelson, will you marry me? Not for land or money, but because I love you and want to spend my life with you." Tears blurred Sarah's vision. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." The wedding took place in September, when the worst of the summer heat had passed and the land was bathed in golden light. They were married in the Johnsons' front yard, with Martha standing as Sarah's matron of honor and Jacob as Cole's best man. The new baby slept peacefully in a cradle nearby, while the older children scattered wildflower petals along the path where Sarah walked to meet her groom. Sarah wore a simple dress of pale blue silk, ordered from a dressmaker in Tucson, with her mother's pearls at her throat. Cole looked handsome and slightly uncomfortable in a new suit, his hair freshly cut and his face clean-shaven. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Cole kissed Sarah with a tenderness that brought tears to the eyes of even the most hardened ranch hands in attendance. The celebration afterward lasted well into the evening, with music and dancing on the packed earth of the yard. As the sun began to set, Cole led Sarah away from the festivities toward their waiting wagon. "Mrs. Owens," he said, the name new and wonderful on his lips, "are you ready to see our home?" They had purchased the Miller property as planned, spending the summer months renovating the small house while continuing their duties at the Double J. Jacob had insisted they take a full week away from the ranch for their honeymoon, before returning to help with the fall roundup. "More than ready," Sarah replied, accepting his hand into the wagon. They drove the short distance to their new property in comfortable silence, Sarah's head resting on Cole's shoulder. When the house came into view, Sarah gasped in delight. Lanterns had been hung from the porch rafters, casting a warm glow over the whitewashed walls and new blue shutters. "Jacob and the boys must have ridden over earlier to light them," Cole explained, clearly pleased by her reaction. Cole carried her across the threshold, setting her down gently in the main room. The house was modest but well built, with a large fireplace, a kitchen area, and 2 small bedrooms. They had furnished it simply but comfortably with pieces purchased from families moving east and items crafted by Cole's own hands. "It's perfect," Sarah breathed, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. "Absolutely perfect." Cole wrapped his arms around her from behind, drawing her against his chest. "Welcome home, Sarah." She turned in his embrace, rising on tiptoes to kiss him. "Home," she repeated. "I never thought I'd find it here in Arizona of all places. Are you disappointed?" Cole asked, a hint of old insecurity in his voice. "It's not the grand house Blackburn promised." "No," Sarah said firmly. "It's better. It's real." She laid her hand against his cheek. "You never promised me anything you couldn't deliver, Cole. That's worth more than all the mansions in the world." Later, as they lay in their new bed, the cool night air drifting through the open window, Sarah reflected on the strange twists of fate that had brought her to this moment. Had Cornelius Blackburn not deceived her, had she not traveled west on false pretenses, she might never have found this life, this love that now filled her heart to overflowing. "What are you thinking about?" Cole murmured against her hair, his arms secure around her. "About truth," Sarah answered. "And how sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as disappointments." Cole's chest rumbled with quiet laughter. "That's a mighty philosophical thought for our wedding night." Sarah smiled, nestling closer to him. "I'm just grateful, that's all. For you, for this place, for everything that led me here." "Even Blackburn?" Cole asked, sounding surprised. "Even him," Sarah confirmed. "Though I hope he's found his way to a more honest life." They had heard that Cornelius had left Holbrook shortly after their engagement was announced, heading south toward Tucson with talk of opportunities in silver mining. Sarah had pitied him, in a distant way, but her own happiness was too complete to dwell on his misfortunes. "You have the kindest heart," Cole said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "It's one of the many reasons I love you." "And you," Sarah replied, turning to face him in the darkness, "have the most honest soul. It's why I trusted you when I thought I could never trust again." In the years that followed, the Owens ranch prospered. Cole's knowledge of horses and cattle, combined with Sarah's head for business, made their operation successful beyond their initial hopes. They added to their land holdings, built a larger house as their family grew, and became respected members of the community. When their first child was born, a son they named James Thomas Owens, Sarah often thought of that day. She'd stepped down from the stagecoach in Holbrook, heartbroken and betrayed, never imagining the happiness that awaited her. By the time their daughter Elizabeth arrived 2 years later, followed by twins Robert and Margaret 3 years after that, the memory of Cornelius Blackburn's deception had faded to little more than a footnote in her life story. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Cole surprised Sarah with a small silver locket. Inside was a tiny portrait of their family, painted by an artist passing through Holbrook the previous spring. "It's beautiful," Sarah gasped, touching the delicate engraving on the surface. "Turn it over," Cole urged. On the back, a single word was engraved: truth. Sarah looked up at him, her eyes shining with tears. "After all these years, you still remember." Cole's smile was tender as he fastened the chain around her neck. "I remember everything about us, Sarah. Every promise made, every promise kept." He drew her close. "And I'll keep remembering and promising for all the years to come." As they stood together on the porch of the home they had built, watching their children play in the yard while the Arizona sun painted the land in gold and crimson, Sarah knew that she had found something far greater than what she had originally sought, not a life built on empty promises and gilded dreams, but one founded on honesty, hard work, and a love as vast and enduring as the western sky above them. In the end, the mail-order bride who had traveled west on a lie had found her truest self in the arms of a man who had never offered her anything but truth, and that had made all the difference.